Hello, welcome to the first painting live stream for Storm Blood. I'm just doing some technical stuff in the background here and then I will get started. So I appreciate your patience. Hello, just a few moments here before I get started, letting some more people join as I share the stream link. Appreciate your patience. Thank you. Alright, now that this wireless connection has resolved, I dropped like to 10% of my possible connection that I was having before. Now it's a-okay, so let's get started. It's been enough time, so this is the first painting live stream I've ever done. So if you have any recommendations or comments or criticisms as to how this format is going, please go ahead and put it in the chat box so that way I can know what to do for the future. Otherwise, here we are. I have a Chaos Lord and Karkadrak and 2 Chaos Knights that I will be working on tonight. The Chaos Lord and Karkadrak is mostly done. I have to do my famous, well, I wouldn't say famous, but the OG blood effects that I normally do, which is with Tamiya Clear Red and Uhu Glue mixed with just some regular black paint. I'll do that at the end, and you'll see how I spread it out across the blades. And I depending on how it goes, I may or may not do some dripping effects. But normally I would just apply it in the spatter effect. I also have some extra Pleck foam pieces that I hung onto, and I do a sponge weathering effect with the blood, and it gets some very nice spattering going on. So that it will be at the end. So let's first work on these knights, and I am using the Citadel painting handles. This is the XL version for big models such as this. Otherwise, the normal ones, the original size, these Chaos Knights will not fit on them. I've tried that before, and it's not big enough to expand. So that's that. I'll go ahead and remove Karkadrak and set them aside. Let's get started with this knight here. So I am painting these to fit the rest of my army. So they'll be painted with red armor and black accents, and of course some brass details, because those are the colors of Khorne. The shield, I haven't decided yet what color it's going to be. It might be just a black shield, that way there's some differentiation. I haven't decided yet if the horse armor will be black or red, but I know for sure the rider's armor is going to be red. So I'm going to start with that first and see and feel it out with the horse armor panels. So I'll probably just do like this one, not this one, there's some cracks here that I want to have some detail pop up in the same manner as the Hex Battle Axe on the Karkadrak Lord. So I'll just go ahead and do this panel as once the armor is done on the rider. I'll do this panel first, probably black, just to see how it goes, or red, because it's interesting to see how these go. Because I've seen in the past, I've been painting red for 6 straight years now, because I played Khador in the past. This is a holdover mug from those days. It's a paint water mug. Doesn't matter what it is, as long as it works. So I've seen with painting so many red models that the more that you can break up the red, the better the overall model will be. And that actually helps out the Karkadrak Lord a lot, because I did brown for the Karkadrak for his skin, also did black spines. Also I did a black cloak instead of a red cloak, because that'd be too much red on the model. And of course it's broken up, and I did some glowing runes. Draw your eye to the weapons as like a focal point, and did normal scheme with the horns here, so that way those also nicely pop up. So I'll follow the same ideas that are established here on the Karkadrak and move it over to the Chaos Knight. I'm hoping that all red armor will be fine, but only one way to find out, and that's just to go for it. So let's start with, I use paint-wise, I have Vastly Vallejo Game Color. This is the first line of paints I used when I started wargaming 10 years ago now. And my first store stocked Vallejo Game Color, and I had researched a full month on how to paint stuff before I actually got started. And I came to the conclusion that Game Colors would be the best paint range for me, since I'm not a fan of the, I actually don't have one out here. I'm not a fan of the Citadel paint pots. I vastly prefer these dropper bottles, and there's more paint, and they're cheaper. So it's like, it's just a complete win-win. The only downside is, if you cannot get them locally, ordering them online, of course, has some return time. Well, not return, some turnaround time before you can actually get started painting. So, my first color that I'll be doing is Vallejo Game Color, Gory Red. This is a great, well, it's not exactly opaque. That's what the heavy red line is for. It's extra opaque. This is the Vallejo equivalent to the Citadel base paints. And since I'm using a gray primer or undercoat, depending on which term you prefer, going straight over with Gory Red would be easier because it's less layers to go from heavy red to then Gory Red and then going up. So let's get this going. I have a wet palette here. This is a Masterson Stay Wet handy palette, and I just have, of course, do not treat this well at all. And I am using Vince Venturola's idea of using parchment paper here. This is the exact same brand that he recommends, the Reynolds Kindred parchment paper, because there's a, actually have this flipped over so you can't really see, but there is, well, you might be able to see. No, not really. So there's some grid lines here, so you can, once you know what the size is that when you first cut it out, you can just straight cut that out and boom, it keeps going. This is, I believe, was 4 wide and 3 tall. So Vince Venturola, if you don't know, is a great resource for hobby tips, and he's been doing this for years, and he's absolutely incredible. He has some Golden Demon entries and other stuff like that. So if you haven't seen him, I highly recommend him. That is Venturella, I believe. I will definitely put a link in the description to his channel so you can check him out. So let's go with the Gory Red here. And there's really no rhyme or reason as to laying out the paints. I don't really do that, since every time right before I start painting, I go ahead and just wash this off. Since I don't paint consistently, I usually go a few days between my paints, and the pigment and the medium start to separate on there. So if you mix it together, since this is a wet palette, there will be some water have seeped into it, and so it's thinner than I would normally use. So I just go ahead and wipe it all off and then start from scratch. So since I'm focusing on the rider's armor first, I'm gonna put down 4 drops of this Gory Red. And I will then do, I use Vallejo's thinner medium, because it's the same thing as, what's it called now? This Citadel's LeMan medium, I believe it's called now. I don't remember what it was in the past, but that's what it's called now. It's the same thing as just the medium that is inside of the paint itself. So it just breaks, it smooths out the pigment so that it's not as concentrated, but it actually doesn't thin the paint. But I do use some actual water, but I primarily use the thinner medium, because I found for how I paint, using thinner medium over water, I'm able to have more control over the paint using this. So I could probably also use some flow improver too, but I've never invested in it, so I honestly don't know how it would work for me. So I just put in 3 drops of thinner medium by accident. I will then compensate for that, put 1 more drop of Gory Red in, because I normally do 2-1-1 ratio for paint, thinner medium, and water. So I put 3 drops in. I have to put now 2 more drops of Gory Red in to keep this ratio going. Then, with this eyedropper that does not work very well, but it still does the job, grab some fresh water. Just put 1 drop of water in. And then use this highly beat up Citadel Standard brush that no longer is a brush, since the hairs on this just went crazy, so I just ripped it out, and I just use it as a mixing stick. And just mix everything together. Rinse it off. And then just wet our brush a little bit. I am using a Winsor & Newton Series 7 size 2. Now I use big brushes specifically because it doesn't matter. The actual size of the brush doesn't matter that much. It's the point. And let's see if I can get the camera to focus on that rather than on the knight. So let me move the knight out of the way. Come on. Come on. There he goes. Nope. There you go. So there is a nice point on this, and that point is what matters more than the size of the brush. What the size of the brush gives me, it allows me to draw once or twice from the palette in order to be able to cover that surface without. So I spend more time applying paint on the surface rather than having to continuously draw. So when I draw, I go like this with so let's see. Okay, good. So I put the point down, then I twist and I pull back on the brush. So there is some. There you go. So now it's mostly on the tip, and I try, and then I do not want it. Actually, I got some paint on my hand already. I do not want my paint to get into my ferrule. That is an absolute no-no. So I remove the initial excess on my paper towel and get right to it. So let's see what we have here. There is an armor panel right here. And forgive me for if my hand or anything gets in the way of the camera, because painting on camera is kind of awkward. Apparently I didn't draw as much paint as I anticipated, so I'll just go for it again. Let me see if I can get my light better. There, that should be better. Yep, that's good. Let me change my angle of my camera. There, that's much better, okay. And just have at it. So there is a saying that Duncan Rhodes, who now has his own YouTube channel, who he was formerly on Warhammer Community's channel and team. Now he does his own thing, since he's now household name essentially in the painting world. So see, that's much better draw, and notice how it's starting to seep into the belly. So you want that. So if you spin the brush while you're drawing, that's a good amount that you get. Then just dab the initial excess off and keep on going. Now, it might be tempting to go back over the first coat while it's still drying, but you don't want to do that because you could break the first layer. Since remember that acrylics, when they dry, they're essentially plastic. So right before it dries completely, if you apply another layer on top of that, you might just pull it off, and you really don't want to do that if you want to have nice smooth coats. I'm just looking here to see what other spots that I might have missed that would be this red armor. Still got plenty of paint on my brush, so I'll just keep on going. That's when you know you have a really good draw. Okay. Telling you, these angles are, when you're not used to this is harder than it looks. And to prevent it from drying on the brush, every once in a while I just rinse the paint out. It's a good habit to get into, since if you have a wet palette, you have plenty of paint still here. Draw a little bit more, spin in, dab excess off, and keep on going. There is an armor panel that is right here, right there. Let's see if you can see it's right here. And I'm going to try to get that one right now. Apologies if my right hand continues to get in the way of the camera. Yeah, I might have to be in the way of the camera in order to get to this, otherwise it's not really going to be possible. Okay. So that's that. See if there's any other spots that I might have missed. There is some armor right here. Okay, so far so good. Then we have, so that's leather here, that's also leather, and I don't see any other armor parts. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring out some black, block in the cloak here, then do this one armor panel here that I mentioned before to see how that looks. I normally like to, if my specific army is of an existing one, like Khorne models, I like to stick to the box art stuff, since I'm not exactly the most creative of people. I am technical by trade, but I can definitely replicate what I can see as close as possible. Let me add one more drop of black. And the thinning ratio that I mentioned earlier, the 2-1-1 of 2 drops paint, 1 drop thinner, 1 drop water, that's a rule of thumb. Not all colors nor not all brands follow this. Some brands are thinner than others. Some colors are thinner than others. It also depends on how opaque the color is. Like, for example, I would not do that for orange. I would thin it less because it's such a translucent color. But of course, that's specific to that particular pot of orange and that particular type of orange. You could be using a darker orange where you would need to thin it more. It's just something you got to get a feel for, and that just comes with experience and painting a whole lot of models and making a whole lot of mistakes. So, just get to it. All right, so let's do this. That's a real good draw right there. Now, see how it's not all the way to the ferrule? You do not, that is actually too close for comfort. So you want to use this paint as quickly as possible. You know you thinned your paint correctly when on the first coat you can still see some of your primer right under it. Because that tells you that your paint is not obscuring detail and that you've also either thinned it too much, which for black doesn't matter that much since it doesn't require it to be, well, ideally you want all your layers to be smooth. But black can be getting away with to be raggedy, especially on this surface, especially with this cloak, since it's not completely uniform. But follow the words of Duncan: 2 thin coats, better than 1 thick one. Now, you know when to rinse out your brush when it starts to splay like that. So just go ahead and give it a nice rinse. And keep on trucking. All right, so let's go over to this armor panel mentioned earlier. Let's make this black. See how, and just feel it out. Let's let these portions of black dry out. Well, dry completely, and let's go back over the red. It looks like all of it's the red on the rider, and it looks like it's dried completely, so let's put our second coat on there. Vallejo Game Color Gory Red, this color. that I'm using right now is a translucent red. Red naturally is translucent, unless again you are of course using a base coat red where there's more pigmentation than normal in order for it to go over, especially over black. This gory red is a translucent color, and unfortunately I've had experiences where I've had to put 3 or 4 coats on in order to get it to be a nice solid red. So far it looks like that won't be the case here, but let's just go for it. I just noticed I didn't see part of his knee here. That is under the shield. So I'm going to go ahead and pick that out. Same with this armor panel back here that I initially got that I couldn't show on camera. It's right down here, if you can see. No, not really. Yeah, it's down here. Okay, so let's let that red dry. Go back over to the black, put a second coat over the black. Looks like the first coat of the black on the cloak is still drying, so let's move over to this armor panel here. All right, the crevices are still drying on the cloak, so I will go ahead and start picking out other black areas like horsetail here, the chainmail, the lance here, of course, lance tip. And when I'm not priming black, which is the vast majority of the time, any metallic areas that are silver, I base coat in black first, since silver metallics, I also use true metallics, not non-metallic. That's way too, I ain't got that kind of time. And I'm also not a fan of that style. So any silver metallics I have found go best over black, and any gold type metallics go best over browns. And you can use for golds, you can use a traditional brown like this Vallejo Game Color or Beastie Brown, which is what I used to do in the past. Then I found that there is a brown metallic that Vallejo Game Color put out recently that matches, I believe it's Balthazar Gold, and they call it hammered copper. So I use this for any gold metallics that I intend to use. So let's go over, let's start the lance tip here. Do that in black. Let's start doing the chainmail off the armor plates here on the horse. Now you're probably seeing me draw more and more. That's because I'm actually drawing less and less since I'm going over smaller areas. Then it looks like the cloak is starting to dry here, so that's a good thing. Let's go ahead and rinse out, prevent any paint buildup. So what you can't see down here is where I have. In fact, let me actually just bring it up here, if possible. Okay, good. What this wet spot here on the paper towel is, it's once I rinse off. So let me just show you here. Once I rinse off, there's of course an excess of water built up on the brush. So I dab it off here and then I spin it back into the point with a twisting motion of my index and my thumb. And that keeps my point going. And I've learned this as a way to extend your point as long as possible, and it just works. Especially on Kolinsky sable brushes, which this Winsor & Newton Series 7 is, it does wonders. So I will keep on doing it. I haven't drawn that much paint, gotta get some more. Looks like the black armor panel here dried out quite nicely, so that'll be nice to look at. Once we're done with picking out these metal parts, well, intended to be silver metallic parts with this black. Okay, circle back over the chainmail, see if we missed any parts, and yep, there's one spot right here. And now let's do the horsetail. Something that I've also had the unpleasant experience of occurring is, see this water drop right here? When you rinse out your brush, you want to get rid of this water drop as quickly as possible, because I've had it do this. With gravity, the water drop eventually goes into the brush and it thins out your paint far more than you were anticipating it. Or when you're applying it on your model, the drop then goes and spills onto that part of the model and just messes up your brush stroke that you just did. So I don't know if that's me rinsing too hard, putting the brush too far in, but that's something I've had to learn myself to get around. Oh, that is far too much paint being drawn right there. So let's rinse this out and start again. Alright, this should be a bit better. Yep, that's much better. So, the cloak is completely dry on its first layer. Let's put the second layer on. And then under the cloak. Apologies for the shadow that's showing up on camera. Otherwise, I would not be able to paint this, since I rely on turning and twisting the model so much, just like that. Okay. The under part of the cloak is almost done. Alright, so that's that. So let's go back to this armor panel here. So now that I see this black armor, I then have to decide what color I want the horse to be, because I don't want black armor on a black horse, because that's too much black, especially with the black cloak. So probably we'll have to do no, not brown horse. Probably a gray horse would work. And I can bring that down and washing it with the dark tone from Army Painter. So I use these because they are carbon copies of the original Games Workshop washes, the original Citadel washes of Devlin Mud and Bad Black. They are, of course, cheaper than Citadel paints, in dropper bottles, and you get more. This is just an absolute win-win in my opinion. I found a blog article that compared these to Bad Black and Devlin Mud respectively, and you really could not tell at all the difference between the two of them. So it's like, this is a no-brainer, especially since Agrax Earthshade, when they swapped over to renaming their entire paint range, they changed the formula on from Devlin Mud to Agrax Earthshade just enough that it felt like that the wash went into the crevices far easier, but I think it looked thinner, or there's not as much pigment that there was. So I was a little disappointed with it. but I just used it because I didn't know anything else at the time, and then found these guys and haven't looked back since. Okay. Let's start looking at, let's put some gray on. This, I'll be using Vallejo Game Color Cold Gray for the horse, and also it's the initial color that I use for any fur details, like this shoulder fur that's attached to the cloak. And I do that so I then wash it with dark tone, and then I dry brush the cold gray back on top, and that's actually why you see all this paint build up here, because this is me dry brushing. Since I don't have any non-porous surfaces and I don't want to put it on the table, even though you may see it from, this is from the past. All right, so there's 4 drops as I normally put down, so that way I don't have to remix all this. And here's 2 drops of thinner, and then the 1 drop of water. And then mix it up. And rinse it out. So I'll first put this gray, oh, that's too much. I got it almost up to the ferrule again, so I drew too much there. So let's do this. That's better. That's a good drop. Let's do the fur first. And I can see the primer color, so that is perfect thinness for my way of doing this. Perfect thinness. Is that even a phrase? Okay. At this stage, I'm not too concerned with being clean, since you can probably see right here. In fact, I just dabbed a little more on. I'm not too concerned with being clean, since this is only the base coating phase. I can just very quickly clean anything up if necessary. So that part's done with the fur. Now let's pick out the horse skin itself. Don't forget the ear. Brush is starting to splay a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and rinse that out and prevent paint from building up more. So there's my spin to keep my point, or reestablish the point better. Draw and do it again. Try to look for any exposed parts in between armor plates, like right here with the horse's butt. There's also some right here where the neck meets the saddle. Or the main body of the horse, however you want to look at it. Splaying again, it's out. All right, let's get this part of the horse skin, where it's meeting main body, torso. Well, I don't know horse anatomy very well, so I'm gonna quit while I'm ahead. Almost got to the ferrule. Picking up the fur here on the front of the shoulders of the knight, and going back to look for any more additional spots of foreskin that are exposed from the armor, like right here on the front legs. There's also one of the hind legs right here. I'm not too concerned with painting the bottom of the horse, since that's not a visible part of the model. I'm not the type of painter, I should say, that paints in sub-assemblies, because if you can't see it, I'm not painting it. Okay, so that's the horse skin first coat done. Let's rinse out and reevaluate the armor scheme of the horse. Might have to do... Well, let me actually complete the rider first. I'm working on partial information on how he would look, so let's see what else is here. I got some brown for leather straps on the lance. Let me finish this lance overall part. I don't know what you would call it, the haft of it. Let's get that done. Okay, so this is first coat of black with thinned down, so the way it looks right now is totally normal. 2 thin coats, 2 thin coats. Brush is splaying again. Let's rinse out. Okay. Let's get some brown out. So that way I can do this the leather straps that are in the back of the lance where the counterweight is. So this is the main brown I use for leathers. This is Vallejo Game Color Beastie Brown. 4 drops of paint, 2 drops of thinner medium, and 1 drop of water. There it goes, mix it in. Nope, wrong brush. Or brush handle. Okay, so let's get to all of the leather areas. It's a perfect draw, actually. Sometimes Beastie Brown can go down in 1 coat, sometimes it doesn't. It really depends on how much it gets thinned. Normally with this ratio I do have to put 2 coats down, like I'm already seeing it here on the boot here. Since I can still see just tiny bit, well not a tiny bit, I can see the primer color just through this brown, so that definitely tells me I have to put another coat down. Well, it's looking like my brush is getting beat up, so I might have to actually clean this while painting, which means I am being a little too rough on it. Okay. Let's rinse this out. Let's do it again on the other side. Alright, so let these boots dry. See how the landslider is going? It's almost dry. So let's look for other leather parts like the reins here. Not too concerned with being clean here, since I'll just paint right over that. I also just see that the inside of the shield here, there's this gauntlet that I haven't picked out, so I'll be doing that next. This is another awkward angle, so apologies for you not being able to see it. Okay, there's a leather part right here of the stirrup. No, actually, where's stirrup metal? Okay. So let's go back to red and pick out that gauntlet. We can also evaluate the red that we have on the rider himself, get an idea if that's good enough or not. Could probably use one more coat, so I'll go ahead and put that on too while I'm picking up this gauntlet. Okay, that's picked out, so let's go back and put another coat of this red on. You must be wondering how in the world did I do this for 6 years straight. I'm asking myself the same question. And that, so in terms of amount of armies that I've painted that are red, so we've got Khador, that was for 4 years straight. Then coming back to Warhammer 40,000 when 8th edition came out, that is World Eaters. Then that is coming over to Age of Sigmar, and that's Blades of Khorne. So that's 3 red armies. But before I went over to playing War Machine, in 6th edition of Warhammer 40,000, I was repainting all my Space Marines to be Blood Ravens. So that's 4 red armies. Why did I do this to myself? I don't know. I don't think I will ever have the answer to that question, besides the fact I must be a bloodthirsty maniac. Because what do all of these armies have in common? Especially when you look at what I liked playing in Khador, that was Doom Reavers, Iron Fang Pikemen. Especially Doom Reavers, I actually played the Mad Dogs of War, Butcher 2 list, and Mark II when that was still a thing, not just terrible. I don't know how it is now. But I played that list. I had 6 units of Doom Reavers, so yes, I guess I really am just, I prefer the bloodthirsty maniacs. Okay, there's no coat on the helmets. Let's put another one on. Put another one on this brace, on the fan brace. Oh, there's a armor plate here behind his leg, so I'll put that on, pick that out. Okay, flip over to the other side. Pick up this knee under the shield. Okay, let's put another coat on the chest plate, or breastplate, I should say. Get my names of armor correct. For example, he has no shoulder, he has no right? Yeah, he's got pauldrons buried under this fur here. So pick those out. Yes, it's pauldron, not shoulder pad. He's not wearing leather armor. All right, that looks good so far. Let's leave that to dry, and let's put another coat of brown on all the leather parts that we've picked out so far. I am starting to lean towards doing black armor plates now that I fill in the knight more and more. So let's keep doing that, and I'll make that final decision. Normally, I do not make up a scheme as I go, but since I'm essentially inverting this color scheme, kind of have to do that. And what I mean by inverted is when you look at the scheme of these knights on the box art of the Star Collecting box that these come in, they are black armor with a red cloak. I am doing here red armor on the knight with a black cloak instead. Did I say red cloak or black cloak? I don't remember. Either way, so normally they're black armor, red cloak. I'm doing black cloak, red armor instead. That way they're marked Khorne. Although, of course, you could do some more conversions to actually make them look like they're coordinate models, but I want to be able to move these into Slaves to Darkness in the future if I so choose. So I will just keep them as they look. Besides, I think they look perfectly awesome as they are already. So I am not doing any conversions on these. But I'm also not the type to convert much. Unless I'm playing orcs, then I just have a field day with it because it can just do anything and it'll work, because orcs. Most of the time, the conversions that I do are usually head swaps or just reposing. Even then, the repose is just minor, like moving an arm to be in a different spot. That's really it. But if it's with a kit that it's multi-part, multi-pose like the older Tactical Marine kit, or in Space Marines in Warhammer 40,000, that's when I go a little ham, because I make sure that they all have different poses, looking in different directions, since I have that capability very easily outside of the box. But if you make me start to break out a hacksaw or anything, that's when I draw the line. That type of conversion is not my style. Okay, our picked out leather parts so far looking good. So let's leave that paint to dry, and let's go ahead and continue to fill in the Chaos Rider. Next thing I'm going to be doing are the horns on this helmet, and I do this in the traditional bone style that is on the Cargo Jack Lord here. So the first color that I lay down for anything bone is Vallejo Game Color Khaki, which is, man, I think that is not Baleful Brown. I don't remember exactly which color it is off the top of my head. In the same of the equivalent in the Citadel range. I think the color in the old range is Khemri Brown. I'm most likely wrong though, since the old range is very old now. And when I say old range, I'm referring to prior to the entire renaming that Games Workshop did of their Citadel paint range. Is it what, 5-6 years ago now? It's when they had Bolt Gunmetal, Ultramarines Blue, McCrag Blue. Well, McCrag Blue is still a color right now. Goblin Green, Chaos Black, Skull White. It's also the same range that Devlin Mud and Badab Black were in. Anyway, whatever the equivalent of Vallejo Game Color Khaki is in the Citadel range, that's what you can use to do if you're following along only with Citadel paints. Let's just pick out this horn here. Again, not being too concerned with being clean here, since in the future, with highlights and whatnot, it will get cleaned up. Okay, the other horn. I just noticed that I have on my computer also the stream, so I can look ahead to see, well, look behind to see what you guys see. And I just finally noticed an hour and a half into this stream that my camera was not staying focused on one particular thing. So I would have to figure out how to do that. Probably just have to turn off autofocus. Nope, not that. Okay. All right, let's leave that set. Let's get back to it. Okay, so the horns are now picked out. Let's see if there's any other bone pieces on this model. Does not really look like it. I mean, you can, if you want to, pick this out to be bone. This is looks like a demon head on the front of the armor here, but I'm gonna pick that out as being gold instead. I'll leave that be. I moved my sheet out of the way to see if the camera is still going in and out of focus on it, and so far it looks like no, that's not the case. So that's a good thing. I don't know if it's also the settings that I just changed for the focus itself of the camera. All right, so now let's go over and start going back over the armor panels here on the horse. Start filling that in now that I made that decision to go ahead with that color. Need more paint. Still not enough black paint. Might have to remix some more. All right. Yep, gotta mix more black paint. Okay. Since there's more black on this model than anything else, I'm gonna increase the amount that I drop down. Go 6 drops. Keep the math the same with the formula, but still only 1 drop of water. Too much water, especially on a wet palette, and this paint will be runny and not exactly usable unless you want to glaze. And if I had more time, or more importantly, more patience, I would definitely be using far more glazes, and I would be glazing hero models like this Chaos Lord and Karkadrak, but again, time. You must be wondering, but hey, with everything going on, shouldn't you be having the time? Maybe. Maybe. I'm not a competition painter. I guess I would say I am a above tabletop quality, whatever you define tabletop quality to be. I'm an above tabletop quality painter, but I am not a competition painter. Okay, so start picking out the rest of the armor plates here. And I am very familiar with how Vallejo Game Color Hammered Copper goes over black, so I am not too concerned with having to do a lot in order to get this demon face to be gold at the end of the day. Okay, more armor on the horse. Rinse out, so it's starting to build up already. And redraw. Now, if this occurs, you might be able to either wipe it up with your finger, and what I say is if you get too strong of your base color on top of another one, you can wipe it off with your finger, or if it's still wet, get some water on your brush, dab off the excess, of course, and then you can just rinse it out. And apparently that black was so thin it dried up like almost immediately, so I wasn't able to wipe it off. Normally, that's what I would do. Okay. Looks like so far the armor on the horse already has the first. Well, there's also there's the shin guards here on each leg, so I'm gonna pick those out now. There is also some additional hair on the back of the legs here, so I'll pick those out in black as well. Now, you might be thinking, there's a lot of black on this model. Well, at first glance, yes, but when it comes to highlighting further down the line, each part of black will get its own highlight, and then by that, they will be distinguished from each other. So the armor is going to be highlighted with a dry brush of silver. And what has done in the past, for me with other models, is it acts as a highlight, and it also breaks up the black to be pleasing to the eye, and also sells that it's metal, that it's blackened metal, which looks really cool. Think of the Warhammer Fantasy Black Orcs, and look at how they do. Where their armor is black, but it's all scratched up, and you can see the bare metal. It's that type of effect that I will be applying here, and that's what will cause the flat blacks to be broken up. And the horsetail and the cloak will be picked out with a dry brush of the cold gray that was done for the horse skin, and that causes it to look different. It's also about the application too. With these dry brushes that I'm talking about, they're heavy dry brushes. Well, there's going to be a heavy dry brush on the horsetail since there's so much texture. It's going to be a light dry brush on the cloak here, focusing mainly on the high points and also the edges of the cloak in order to pick those out. And with the armor, it'll also be a light dry brush all around, since the stress of the armor is not uniform from battle reasons. And then once all that's done, I come back over and do some picked out edge highlights with the same color that I just used with the dry brush, and that gives it some fine, well, not fine, some very pinpoint spots to look at. And working together, that's causes the differentiations of black to work, and it works quite nicely. And also, don't forget that this chainmail will be silver down the road, so that is again will look different. So there will be enough differentiation of colors on this model, so it does not look like just one crazy block of black. The armor trim on the horse being gold will also help in breaking up all of this black. It's something that I've learned while painting so many models over the years, that don't look at the end result until you're past the beginning of the base coating, which is what this is. Because right now it doesn't look that great, but then again, there's just so much that's not done yet. Also fill this shield in now. Well, start to fill this shield in. That way we can get this primer to stop staring straight out. Stop sticking out like a sore thumb. And the same thing will occur, same armor dry brush of silver, and it will be focused on the edges like this. And if you can see here how the lines are of this black, that's the idea that will be occurring here with, let's get closer. That's the idea that will occur with the silver, specifically on the shield. Let me actually zoom in some more. Okay. Seems to look pretty good so far with the with an additional zoom. All right, it's good to know. Okay, let's see here. So this cloth here that's right under the boot, that will also be black. There's an armor plate here. Same here. It's just right under the reins, I should say. Oh, might as well also give these armor plates a second coat of black so they're not that splotchy. And since I'm also already here, same with the blinders on the horse armor. Okay, what's next here? That's the cloth here. Give this a second coat. I'm already here. Rinse out. Prevent that buildup from happening. And draw and keep going. Oh, I missed a shin guard here. Let's pick that out now. There's also the lance body needs a second coat. Actually, I missed both hind shield shin guards. Or just one part of them. Okay. There's also the scabbard for a sword that I need to do. Okay, let's go back over to the lance. I missed the handguard. Now you might be wondering, why in the world did I prime this model gray? Yeah, this is actually gray, not a white. This is Vallejo's polyurethane primer gray. So you might be wondering, if I'm painting this model with so much black, why did I prime it gray? That's because the black primer is not the same type of black that is in this bottle that I use, Army Painter Matte Black. There is a slight differentiation in the blacks between the two. So if I want a part of this model to be black, like the armor plates here on the horse, I have to paint over black anyway. So it makes it hard. Yes, I take more time painting black rather than spraying it, but the effects where I have less time painting red, like this is just 3 coats of gory red, where if I was painting over black primer, I would have to do the heavy red, then do the gory red. And that will take twice as long just to get this red going. And I've done it way too long to know, no, let me just skip that entirely. Ideally, excuse me, ideally, I airbrush my reds, because in the time it took for me to just do all this small parts of red, I can do the entire model in red and make it smooth, because airbrushes are amazing like that. But for streaming purposes, airbrushing, especially with my setup, having me set up to do airbrushing and stream at the same time is not exactly practical, since I don't have a way to airbrush indoors. Ideally, you would need a fume hood, and I don't have one, and I just use my balcony in my apartment to airbrush. So it's really, I'm not, that type of expenditure is not really required for what I do with the airbrush. Okay, so there's still some black parts that needs to be done, like the shield needs a second coat, and I also saw just now that there's a chain that connects the fur parts on the knight here that's going across his shoulders. So let me do that first and then give the shield a second coat. And let's go over to shield. Also some of the edges here that we're not done. So fill those out now. And then the second coat. This armor panel also needs a second coat, so I will do that next. I have just a few minutes left in my allotment that let me rephrase that. I have just a few minutes left in how much time I've allocated to stream tonight, so I appreciate you for joining in and allowing me to iron out the kinks of doing this, since I just got some equipment in where I was testing a new setup, and I was just absolutely amazed that it works as I imagined it would. So that actually helps out my normal recording schedule a lot. And I mean a lot, because the way I did it before, it just took so much time and set up and tear down, having to be in a specific room. Now with this setup now, I can be far more mobile with how I get things going. Alright, this black is looking pretty good. Just doing second coats on these shin guards here. So before I end the stream for tonight, I will show how I do blood. And I've done this for many years, and it actually is better, than, in my opinion, than the Blood for the Blood God paint that Games Workshop puts out. Because I make it, well, it's more in the application method, and I also, again, find it cheaper to do, since this pot of Tomato Clear Red, I have 23 milliliters of this paint, and it's still in a not the best pot, and it's still acrylic, but I find this Tamiya is used with for the stereotypical model kits, like for planes, cars, Gundam models. So this is actually easier to find, and I believe also cheaper per milliliter. So this is, you can tell I use it a lot because look at it dripping down here, and I will show you how that is done in just a moment. Okay. So I'm going to, before I do the blood effects, I'll show you what I mean, how all this black starts to break up by showing one part of armor trim by base coating it with hammered copper. Actually, I have an older pot. It's almost done, so let me use that to finish it off. Should have more than just a few drops in here, though. And it does. Still has 4 in here. Now, since this is metallic paint and there's metal flakes inside of here, I only use thinner medium. I do not actually put drops of water in here because that will cause the metal flakes to, the way they suspend in water, it just breaks away like that. It doesn't stick to itself or stick to the medium. I think it actually breaks the medium. So, learn that. A lot of this stuff, learn the hard way, so that's why I'm repeating it now. So you don't make the same mistake. Pardon me, I'm trying to adjust something with the camera here. There he goes. Okay. There. Right, so I'm gonna show it on what the hammered copper does on the shield here. And I will pick out the chaos symbol on here. Again, not too concerned with being precise and clean here, since this is black that I'm going on top of. Black will clean this up very easily. To further emphasize the point that I'm trying to show here, I will bring out some silver, and there is a chain going across the shield here on top of the chaos symbol, so I will pick that out too. Now, since I am not putting that much silver on at the moment, I'm only putting out 2 drops and 2 drops of paint and 1 drop of thinner medium. Again, keeping consistent with the formula, since these colors do follow that formula. 2 drops paint, 1 drop thinner, 1 drop water, if applicable. And in this case, no. I'm going to bring this paper towel back here. Shouldn't be focusing on it anymore. Yeah, it doesn't look like it. Okay. Alright. So this chain here should show exactly what I'm talking about. Now this is a gunmetal metal, which is the Vallejo equivalent of the lead belcher, or even older bolt gunmetal. Going over it a second time. All right, so notice how all of a sudden this no longer looks like boring black. There's actually some depth here. There's some things that catch the eye, like this. I don't remember what you would call it. Like this, not this tabard thing, but whatever. There's also, especially since there's this hand that's dangling off here that when painted skin, that breaks up the black more. So it's all about even if you're painting black, like a majority black scheme, the more you break it up, the better the model will look, since it's more interesting to the eye and it's not just one glance, oh look, it's all the same color. So let's actually demonstrate this even further by just doing a quick edge highlight along the shield. Ride it along with the side of your brush. All right, so not sure how much you can see here. In fact, there's some spot right here that I haven't done yet. So there, now it looks even more interesting, because it looks like it's bouncing off light off the edges here, which is exactly what you want it to look like. Especially with these this battle damage that's sculpted on. All right, and there you go. So over time, this detailing being picked out, the black is no longer boring. Okay, so let's set him aside and let's get on to the final part of the show tonight. And that's doing Khorne's most favorite thing, blood effects. Let's bring this Chaos Knight off the handle. Let's put the Karkadrak Lord back on. So you can use any non-porous surface to first pour out the Tamiya Clear Red onto this surface. This is actually an old phone case that I still have, and as you can see, it's quite used up. Let me actually zoom out a little bit here. Come on, there it goes. So it's quite used up. So the first thing I do is, of course, shake it up. And shake it up real good. So once you're done, just unscrew it. And you can use some of it that's built up under the cap here, but for what we're doing here, you're best just pouring it out. And you're not being exact with this at all. And there's some that's going to catch here along the screw-on point, so that's how this drip down occurs. And it's totally normal, since we're not being precise with this at all. So there's a good amount of the clear red poured out here, and it looks pretty good already, but this is too fresh. So get some black here, and we want to mix in the tiniest amount of black possible that's not a speck on your finger. So I'm going to put a drop right here of black, and only one drop for this entire thing. If you do more than this, this will be black with a hint of red. Then I will take my mixing stick, formerly a Citadel standard brush, and I will take the tip of this stick, grab just that much, and mix it in. Might not look like much of a difference here, but again, I learned this with hard experience. So let's flip this paper towel over and then move it up a little more. So look at that. This is now dark. It looks like it's dried up. Let me actually pull some more out with another brush and run it alongside here on the brush so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Mix them in, then bam. Some more, bam. All right, that's still too light. I might actually have to put some more in or mix it up better. Let me actually mix it up some more. Okay, that's better. Watch. Probably actually get it a little bit darker, so I'll just put another dab in there. Keep mixing. So that's much, much better here. All right, that's pretty good. Like I said, this is not exact. This is definitely something that has to be, you have to feel out, unfortunately. So with that said, you do not apply this with a brush. That's where the pluck foam comes in. So if you ever heard of the sponging technique, that is exactly what we're doing here. So as you can see, this is not a uniform piece. This is actually from a KR Multicase foam tray that I just held onto. I have so much of this because this foam absorbs this paint very, very well. So you got to continuously make fresh blobs, fresh pieces of, well, make more like tear fresh pieces of pluck foam. So once you do that, you're going to pretend like you're dry brushing here, but you're using a piece of foam instead. So you're going to dab onto it. So that's a good amount there. Then you're going to dab it off on the paper towel here. Notice how there's just so much of it immediately. And you're going to keep going. Let me actually adjust the camera here. And you're going to keep going until, just like dry brushing, there's not much paint left. Like that. So, now, the next thing is, as I say, you have to have studied liquid physics a little bit to make this convincing with this method. So, this is an axe. Axes swing, they don't stab. So, the impact of this weapon is going to be along the edge. And when you factor in with just basic Newtonian physics, force is coming that way, so the spatter needs to go the opposite direction, so going towards the haft here. So the way you do this to get this effect is you go with the edge of the weapon. Watch. So let's see here. Trying my best to show this on the camera. Oh, okay, perfect, right there. So you're going with the edge of the weapon, and you want to, depending on the size of your piece of foam, you probably want to push it in just a little bit, and this is what you get. The more concentrated you have, the bigger, of course, the effect will be. And you want to make sure that you also, oh no, this haft here of the axe has been breaking on me, and this is actually the third time it's broken. So and this is what I mean by having to continuously, oh, there it goes, there it goes. So I'll just hold on to this. So you don't want to continuously build up on the same foam because it'll just dry up, and this is also totally normal. It'll just dry up and you won't get that much paint on. So just tear off that spot, get a new piece, keep going. All right, so here we are with the weapon. There you go. That's exactly what you're looking for right there. This is exactly what you're looking for. So that's good as is. Otherwise, we'll start. Actually, I can do a little bit more on the bottom here. Yes, that's perfect. Just dab some more paint on, go on the other side. So, same thing. Go with the edge of the weapon, push down on it. So that's okay so far. The bottom part here is actually looking quite nice, so you want to try to replicate it. Push down, keep doing that. And Also, like, dab on to get some spatter going, like that. That looks really good. It's actually picking up on it, picking up and removing it, so. Now, you might have noticed that that one time I did not remove some. That's because I know I got a small amount of paint on here. Okay, so that's perfect, as is, right there. So the axe is done. Now onto the sword. So swords, they also they stab and they slice. They're primarily stabbing weapons. So you want to focus on the same with using the same method. So imagine like that, and it will build up and going this direction, like that. And you can get some on the edges here from him slashing, but you want to be building up on the point. So let me actually. One downside of this method is the paint dries extremely fast, so you have to continuously to mix more in and continuously draw. So now with this, what I'm doing is I am pushing down on the blade and then moving along with it. And then once I get to the point, I drag foam down. And that should give me that effect that I'm going for. How it concentrates at one point, because that's that's what would actually happen. All right, I gotta mix more paint in because this dried like immediately. That's thanks to my ceiling fan. So let's mix some more up. And I didn't bring out that much since, yes, this looks like a lot, but that's actually not much since I'm only doing this one part here. Then I will be doing some on the base, so when it's dripping off and not exactly puddling. The puddling part comes with Uhu glue. Strings come from Uhu glue. I'm sure you know the stringing effect that I'm talking about, and you have to specifically use this version of Uhu glue. This is imported. If you get the one that's available in the States, the one in the States is not flammable, and the ingredient that makes Uhu glue stringy is the flammable ingredient. So you gotta import it, otherwise it won't work. So I will do the stringy part at the very last. And I have a, where is it? I have a green stuff sculpting tool that I use to drag this around. Let me mix up this extra blood. Put some more black in here. Rinse off. And let's test this. Yep, just as good. Okay. Get a new piece. Do it again. This actually might be too small, but let's see. Should be good enough since we're focusing on a point. All right, that's much better. So we're doing starting here and pulling down. Start, pull down, start, pull down. And so we have a buildup going there. Let's actually get some more paint. So start, pull down. There you go. And let's get some of the sides, and you're just going to get the very edge of the sword and then just pull down. You have to probably, so in this instance I have to actually get higher, so there, like that. Don't forget, so if you use your finger and push too hard, that's what you get. And you can easily clean that up. Just pull it off on the edge, and it looks like you did that intentionally. So let's check our paint level. Let's get some more. And let's do it on the other side here. So, there, there, there. You can even twist it and just like that. So let's build up the tip a little bit more. Okay. And that tip looks pretty good. So let's add some spattering, if possible, on the blade. Might not be visible. Okay, like just that one dab and that one dab. It's gonna be enough. Yeah, so the blade's good. And let's make it a little bit consistent, and by adding some on the bottom of the blade, even though that's not gonna be very visible. So once that's done, then okay. So the next question becomes: do you want to make it look like it's dripping off of the weapon? So if you do, again, follow physics. So if he's holding it like this, he's probably moving around. So the most likely part where the most likely spots will be around this foot right here. Just how much paint you got. So you're gonna, don't concentrate this, because otherwise it'll just be, you'll be losing the sponging effect. So you're just gonna do this. You're gonna quickly push and then remove. And so there you go. You can also actually do a sponge, like you press down and release. You'll get that. So if you concentrate it and do that, they'll be okay. So you have this buildup here. So it is kind of convincing, but it's not going to be as good as, say, mixing it with the Uhu. So let's go over to the other side, and same logic. The axe would be up here, so it would be dripping down here. And you can, this sponging works really well on these tufts. Like so. And don't feel afraid to actually put some like on his hand, on the weapon, because it will eventually like go back on him. Like see here on, put some of the, like that. And since this is not a Khorne bloodbound model, in this instance, less blood is more blood. As weird as that sounds coming from a Khorne player. Let's put some over here. Let's do a concentration. See there how that's too much? So just simply wipe it away. And let's put just a tiny amount on his cloak. Let's make sure we don't have that much on the sponge, or foam, I should say. Yeah, it's not that much, so just go boop, 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 boop. Like that. And a little bit on the shoulders, boop. Okay. Now you can choose to put some in his mouth like it took a bite out of something, but since the Karkadrak, his weapon profile is with I know it's claws and tail. I don't know if it's teeth. Let me quickly look. Nope, he uses the tearing horn and claws. Okay, so you can put some on the horn here, which I will go ahead and do. And I want to show the uhu part of this before the paint completely dries out. So you can totally do that, because impaling with the horn, some of it would spray back over. And yes, this is totally normal for when I'm doing this. All this buildup on the paper towel. Put some on the rock. And on. Okay. Add some on the claws here. Okay, then let's do the uhu glue. So, with the uhu glue, you're putting down very little glue, otherwise it just gets so stringy and it builds up. So ideally, 1 drop is good. And you have to seal this back up, and notice the glue build up here, because this just oozes out. So, believe it or not, that's enough, so just close it up. Because you mix it into the paint. And that's what the sculpting tool is for. I specifically picked out this sculpting tool for 2 reasons. It has an arrowhead, a broadhead end, and it has a fine application end that I have purposely angled. And there is a reason why it is perfectly angled, specifically angled, and I will show you right now. Because it allows me to do drops like this. And then with the broadhead part, that's how I add splatter. I just follow what physics would tell me. Even do a pool if I so desire. And I just pull it away like so. And this is best done when the glue is still fresh, since you're able to move it nice and easy. So there you go. Add a little bit more to have a central pool. And this is why darkening up this color helps a lot. And you can add some additional drops here. Some on the bush in the back to show some travel. And then just like regular droplets. Do the same thing here. And mix it along inside of the tuft, so that way you can get the stringiness going inside the tuft, which looks really cool. And do the same pulling here. Okay, you can actually do that and pull and spread that around. Now I have some on the very tip of this broadhead here that I do this with. I can get some long spray pattern. Like that. You know, just spread it around. That's what you can get. Now I'll do a small drip here off the tip. And this will be interesting to do, since normally if you want to do this, you need something to grab it on. But for now, like if I actually wanted this to stay on the model while in a game, I'll like add some old brush hair or some fishing wire. You would super glue that along the spot that you want it to be on. But just to show what that looks like, there you go. Let's take the axe head. Let's not forget about this. Let's do the same application. Have it get, so you can also use this to have it build up even more and make it look nice and built up there. Of course, don't forget to spread it around and remove little bits. As the glue dries, it becomes harder and it tends to like be easily removed. So I'm also using the arrowhead here as essentially a cutting mechanism, so it looks uneven. Also removing parts of it so it doesn't look just uniform, because it wouldn't be. So that side's done. Let's flip it over. Let's grab some more. And let's do the same thing here. Can sometimes drag it across and you can get this effect going. There's your buildup. Let's get a tiny bit more. Trying to get a spatter going back. Something like that. And that's how I do blood. Been doing this for a while, and I've applied it to every single Khorne model that I've used, and I'm sticking to it. So if you've been with me this entire time, I greatly appreciate your patience with me finagling and figuring this out, and I greatly appreciate your viewership support. Keep an eye out on the channel for additional streams and as well as other videos coming in the future, especially now that I have this new equipment. This will make this so much easier. Have a great night and happy wargaming, and see you in the next one. Bye.